Hello, Southern Regional. I'm Sean Gerhardt, and I'm here with Officer Fritz, and welcome to SNN's Cops Corner. In this edition of SNN's Cops Corner, we will be discussing young drivers' behavior when stopped by police. Now, Officer Fritz, what can you tell us about that?
Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity and having me here today. This is an important topic. I think it's imperative that young drivers understand the enormous amount of responsibility that they're given by getting their new driver's licenses. And young drivers are one of the most frequently pulled over age group of drivers out there. One thing that I would definitely like to remind young people of is when an emergency vehicle is behind them, pull over to the right, stop if they can, slow down, absolutely. Just because a police car is behind them does not always necessarily mean that they're being pulled over. So it's very important that they yield to emergency vehicles. Another important thing before we get into actually being pulled over is when out and about and traveling and you see emergency vehicles on the side of the road, whether it be a car stop, an accident, some type of an emergency, the state law requires that drivers move over. So that means if you're in the right lane coming up on an emergency vehicle situation, you need to get over into that left lane as safely and quickly as possible. So having said that, I guess let's get into what happens if you actually do get pulled over. Believe it or not, the last thing that officers want to do with young drivers is give them tickets. We understand the financial burden that that causes, so we hope that they can understand the nature and the severity of the circumstances of being pulled over. We don't just pull people over for no reason. If a young driver gets pulled over, there is a reason for it. They did something wrong, there is maybe something wrong with their vehicle, so that's something that needs to be understood immediately. All too often with young drivers, when we approach the vehicle, young drivers tend to be a little bit more confrontational than adults because they don't quite understand why they're being pulled over and they may ask a lot of questions. The most important thing is to listen to officers' guidance, listen to what the officer is saying, follow instructions. If there are any passengers in the vehicle, officer safety is one of the primary concerns for that officer walking up to the car. So roll the windows down, turn the radio down, tell everybody in the vehicle to stop talking so that the driver can communicate with the officer safely. A couple of good tips are to have your credentials all in one place and ready to go in your car. Know where they are so that you don't have to search and fumble around, because the last thing that an officer wants is for a driver of a vehicle to be going through a center console or going and searching through a glove box. It just raises their already heightened sense of awareness. So be respectful, be polite. If you have questions as to why you were pulled over, if you're not told by the officer, there'll be a time where you can ask that. But the important thing is pay attention to what you're doing out there on the road. Be as safe as you can, and if you do know what it was that you were pulled over for, acknowledge that to the officer, because that honesty and that admission of making a mistake, because that's what traffic stops are usually mistakes, will go a long way towards whether or not you get a ticket.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Officer Fritz, and we'll see you next time on Cops Corner.